dropped something already. All right, hello friends. Thank you for joining me again today. In just a second here, I'll show you where I am and what I'm doing. Watercolor sketch, first of all. All right, let's do the official stuff. Daily Art Adventure number 737. Watercolor sketch in a boathouse. Or something like that. I'm not sure they call this a boathouse, but hey. Okay, so let me show you around real quickly. There we go. Isn't that fun? All kinds of tools and lots of wood and machines and men working. Doesn't get much better than that. And I'm sitting on a chair, and I want you to be able to see what I'm drawing as much as possible. But at the same time, my butt needs, my derriere needs some care. Derriere needs some care. Wow, there is so much here in front of me, I hardly know where to start. So for those of you who haven't witnessed me doing what I call watercolor sketch, this is it. This is my watercolor sketch. So I start with sort of a little bit of a mixed media deal. I start with watercolor pencils, and then go to watercolor and pen and ink. I start with light colored watercolor, like yellow, as I'm doing right now. I'm sorry, you guys can probably hardly even see what I'm drawing. Sorry about that. Hopefully it'll get better as we proceed. So I start with a very light color. This is a very particular trick that if you're an artist in any medium whatsoever, you should be aware of this trick, because it can be used in many different mediums, including oil painting, oil and acrylic painting. So the idea is you do your first drawing in a very light color, and then as your drawing gets refined, you draw each layer in a progressively darker color. So in essence, the previous color that you drew in, the lighter one, disappears, so to speak, psychologically disappears. Got it? So that's the idea. So I'm drawing here in yellow. Next, I don't know what color I'll draw with next. It remains to be seen. I'm just trying to get the most rudimentary, the most simple lines in the scene. So this is obviously going to be an interior scene, interior watercolor sketch. After being outside this morning, I just felt like it would be just kind of fun just to sit down and draw. Somebody's sanding. All right, so that's color number one. Some of the choices for next color would be looking for a medium tone, so medium blue, green, fuchsia, and orange. Orange is too close to what I already did. It's a very warm seeing here, for those of you who just joined me, let me point you the direction again. Excuse me, just a minute. There, so there's, I'm not doing that wide of an angle, of course, even though it's lovely. All right, second color, yeah, I settled on fuchsia. I wonder what they call it. They call it a purple. That doesn't look like purple to me. That's all right. You can call it whatever you want. But forgive me just a minute. I need to stand up. It's quite a chore getting out of that chair. Chair. I need to sharpen this pencil. There we go. All right, so sketch number 2. Little more detail and a little more accuracy, moving things. So first of all, I hope you can see the correlation between this technique and what I normally do in my oil painting, when I call it blobbing in a painting, right? So a similar mindset here. You don't have to necessarily get everything right first, right out of the chute. Because you're going to get several different chances to get it right. Drawing it. There's a band saw here that I'm drawing, and obviously a palm sander that we're hearing across the room. Very distinctive sound. I hope that you can hear me better than I can hear myself. That sander is kind of loud. So I'll keep talking as if you can hear me, and I'm just hoping that you can. Let me see if I can get your camera moved. There we go. One of the tricks of the trade that I am in the habit of doing is drawing a border inside the edge of the paper. Just a habit, doesn't need to be done, but I think it's a good idea because for two reasons. One reason is that, believe it or not, the edges of a page, For most people, myself included, the edge of the page is what's psychologically, sorry, I've used that word twice now in the last 20 minutes, psychologically invisible. That is to say, most artists, most people, maybe most bad artists, I guess, like me, when they sit down to do a drawing, they may, and they should, of course, be thinking in designerly terms. They should be, when you sit down to do a drawing on a piece of paper, the artist should be thinking about composition. How is this drawing going to sit in the framework of the paper, right? Got it, should be. Okay. But what actually happens for most people when they sit down, they start thinking compositionally, they don't necessarily see these 4 lines as major elements in the composition. Instead, they just see those 4 lines as, quote unquote, the edge of the page. I don't know if you can see there's a subtle difference between edge of page and composition. I want to get off this topic, so I'll wrap it up quickly. But as soon as you draw lines inside the edge of the page, those lines are psychologically very strongly, I'm very aware of them. I'm keenly aware of them, and they are a part of the composition. So that's reason number 1 for drawing a border. Whoops. Wait a minute here. Sorry. I've got a phone that it had come unplugged. How do these things happen, ladies and gentlemen? All right. Reason number two for doing a boundary border like this is it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, mistake room, if you will. So if you're drawing a horse, an old darn, if you're drawing on a piece of paper like this with no boundary, and you draw a horse, and then as you find out his tail is going to go off the end of the page, you're screwed. It's just too bad. That's the end of the page. Whereas if you're drawing inside a box and you hope to put the horse inside that box, that boundary, then you find out you've cut off his tail. Well, you have a little bit of cheating room. Does that make sense? So anyway, those are 2 reasons for 2 darn good reasons. Let's be clear here. 2 really good reasons for doing a boundary. But still, you don't have to if you don't want to. No siree, bubba. Nobody's going to check on you. There's a sawhorse. I don't know if you can tell I'm drawing a sawhorse. In fact, I've switched over to my control grip. Did you catch that? Because the sawhorse that is over there holding up a small boat. I don't know what it's called, a skiff maybe? Really small, flat bottom boat, like a one person boat. Almost looks like a toy boat, to tell you the truth, like you give to your kids to float around in the lake, you know? Anyway, still, it looks like something you would find in a little shop that builds boats. Duh, because that's exactly what I'm in. A little shop that makes boats. How about that? So I particularly wanted to capture that distinct little boat on sawhorses. And I have accomplished that amazing feat, I believe. big barn door here. Outside the door is water, and across the water is the famous Carrot Island. If you were watching me paint this morning, I was painting the same bank of trees, essentially, just down that way about 200 yards. And it's the reason it's famous. It is kind of famous. It's a very small, little skinny spit of sand dune, you know, with trees that have grown up on it. And it's famous because of its inhabitants. And you've heard of these, possibly. If you've been around for a while, you've heard of the Shackelford ponies. And that's who lives. As a matter of fact, that's who lives on that little tiny island. They live elsewhere in the Outer Banks as well. But they're probably this little island. Here, since I'm talking about it, let me shoot you out the door again. See if you can see it. Hang on, hang on. Bear with me. There we go. Can you see out the door there? It's overexposed, but you can barely see the little bit of land. Let's see if my exposure gets better. Yeah, not much. Okay, never mind. Trust me, in real life, we can see it. So there are horses, wild horses, on that island. Several of the islands along the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But probably these horses here are probably the most famous tourist attract horses because they're right there, they're a quarter of a mile away. And I can't ever remember a time coming to Beaufort. I've been here many times painting. I can't ever remember a time where I didn't see the ponies at some point. I haven't seen them today, but I haven't been looking. But I saw them yesterday and the day before. So kind of fun. Oh, so what are these horses from? They are, what's the theory? I think it's either a Spanish ship shipwrecked, you know, in 1600 or something like that, or 1700 something, or the Spaniards released their horses for some reason. I don't remember, but you can Google it, Shackelford ponies. Anyway, kind of a fun little bit of North Carolina history and folklore. Folklore is not the right word, is it? Well, part of it is. Anyway, there really are wild horses, and the state now, of course, they're a protected species, if you will. And they've been out there for so long that these horses have micro-evolved so that they are able to drink brackish water, or at least eat grass that is growing, like marsh grass, that is growing right in salt water. So they've been studied, you know, by a lot of the kind of people who study that kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, kind of fun stuff. Shackelford ponies, look it up. If I see any out that door right here, I will pick up your camera and I'll zoom in as far as I can so you can see this fascinating oddity of nature and history. So they get minimal, as I understand it, they receive minimal oversight or assistance from the state. Of course, they're protected for one thing, so you can't go over there and kidnap one, or you can't shoot one. I think you get a lot of trouble for shooting a Shackelford pony. And sorry, it's just funny. You get in a lot of trouble for shooting a Shackelford pony. Don't try it. I recommend don't try it. And but they are, the state, of course, tries to keep them in their natural state, so to speak. So they interfere minimally. I mean, they've lasted 400 years out there on these little islands, all by themselves. You can, okay, I've given you plenty enough information. You can Google it for yourself. Just fun. So there we go. There's my second color, right? All right, now, and as you can see, I hope you see that once I drew it in the fuchsia purplish color, let me try to get this centered for you. Why isn't it? Why am I not getting it right? Sorry. Okay. Away from my body. There we go. All right. I drew it first in a warm yellow-orange, and then I drew it in a fuchsia light purple color. And as you can see, the orange essentially disappears. I mean, you can still see it, but you don't pay any attention to it because the purple line is darker. So that's the trick. Got it? Now, very typically in this watercolor pencil trick, I'll do a third and darker color, which in this case would very often be blue. But to tell you the truth, I'm pretty confident in my sketch as it is. So I'm thinking of going straight to ink, pen and ink. Yeah, I think I will. So once again, some of you saw, hey, this would qualify as another Inktober broadcast, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Okay, so guess what? Guess what the challenge is now? It's like these same artistic challenges keep appearing in all the various mediums. You English majors, I know the word is media, but in the art world, I don't think everybody be confused if you said media. So I say mediums, right? The same challenges, so to speak, keep appearing in all the various mediums, and that one of the challenges is don't overdraw, don't say too much, don't draw. By say, I'm talking about with your drawing, don't say too much. So for instance, it would be a significant waste of time and energy if I were to simply trace, and often I'll use the word trace in various stages of my artwork, but I rarely mean, I don't mean trace usually in a slavish exact kind of way. Anyway, it would be a mistake for me to trace over all of my purple lines with this ink. That would just be a waste of, as I said, waste of time and energy, right? So I don't want to overdraw. I just want to draw. By the way, yes, I'm slightly uncomfortable holding my pen in that death control grip. I'd rather have a freer stroke. Okay, now let me repeat one of my other mantras. The essence of good painting is what? The essence of good painting is making interesting marks, right? Sometimes I say the essence of good painting and drawing. So here I am drawing. The essence of good drawing is making interesting marks. Similitude? Yes. Accuracy? Yes. Realism? You betcha. Good drawing? Absolutely. Realism? Yes. But even more important than that is interesting marks. I'm sorry, you guys are seeing this drawing almost upside down when I'm holding it that way. Sorry about that. Can't be helped. So that's, it seems to me there's like 2, 3 band. Okay, 4. I see 4 bandsaws down there. Evidently, boat builders really like bandsaws. On a related note, human beings cannot draw straight lines without a ruler or a computer, right? So you don't even want to try to draw straight lines. Instead of drawing straight lines, you draw crooked lines that are interesting and that give the impression of straight lines. That's what this whole drawing, forgive me, let me try to move you a little bit. I keep moving a little bit. Is that better? Hang on. I'll get you yet. Hang on. Let's try that. All right. So this whole drawing is going to be a mass, if you will, of crooked lines that give the impression of straightness. I can't tell you how many times I've been out painting with the same principle. It's true. Been out painting on the street, and especially late in the painting process, somebody will come up and say, "Wow, did you do all that freehand?" And I guess they mean by that, like I didn't use a ruler. Which, in fact, there's nothing wrong with using a ruler. But anyway, that's the way people talk. You know, it's leftover grade school talk. Anyway, the funny part is they'll say, "Did you do that freehand?" And of course I did. And what is, they're impressed by my straight lines. I'm not kidding. They are amazed, because I'm doing architecture in a city most of the time. That's where people, run into me most often. And they're amazed at my straight lines. And I usually smile and nod. But you all know the kind of the joke behind that is that there is not a straight line in the whole place. Whoops. So you see the way my hand is moving, kind of iterative. Iterative means stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. That's one way to describe these marks. Stuttering, skipping. Now, every human being on the planet has a different way of moving their hands. So you couldn't move like me if you wanted to, and I can't move like you. We all are the marks that our hands make are as idiosyncratic as our fingerprints. So you have to find your own interesting marks. And yes, I'm even going to replicate this boundary with my pen. It is, Rembrandt was, of course, a freaking genius, painter, artist. But we actually see, I believe, we actually see the genius of Rembrandt most pronouncedly, can I say that, in a most pronounced degree in his drawings, drawing even more than in his paintings. In his drawings, you can really see the marks of the movements of his hand. He was just amazing, just amazing. So I'm drawing here another bandsaw, bandsaw number 2. This is the bandsaw. There's 3 in this band. I'm gonna let it go at 3, I think. 1, 2, 3. Unless I try to sneak that one in. It's behind that post. In another life, I could so have been a woodworker or a carpenter or even an engineer or an architect, honestly. I would have been quite content in any of those careers, I think. Not complaining, very happy to be doing what I'm doing. That's an understatement. But I love the looks of I love all these tools make me envious, if you know what I mean. It's like, ooh, I'd like a bandsaw like that. Wouldn't you like a bandsaw like that? In this little watercolor sketch, I really do want to try to convey the feeling of this room that I'm in, of course, which is, it's all wood, except for the machines. It's wood, 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 wood everywhere. And so it's all, I'll show it to you again in just a minute. So it's very warm colors. Let's turn it around. Let's let you look at it again, just for fun, just for a minute here. Hang on, I'll zoom you out. Isn't that just lovely? I hope you can see what attracted me to this scene. And this, for some reason, this kind of highly textured is one of the words that I would use to describe this feeling in this room. For some reason, makes me feel like a watercolor more than an oil painting. I don't know why. No good reason for that at all. Just purely subjective. It just feels watercolorish to me. So that's why I'm doing watercolor. I'm conflicted a little bit. In need of counseling, evidently. For this reason, when I do the pen and ink stage, the pen and ink phase, like this, I would rather not do the whole drawing before I move on to watercolor. I would rather do some watercolor and then do ink on top of the watercolor. But there's so much complexity in this scene that I'm just afraid that if I did a watercolor wash on top of this drawing, the watercolor drawing, the watercolor pencil drawing, I'm sorry, I'm afraid it would disappear and I would lose a bunch of drawing. So I am kind of playing the chicken way out here. It's like, you're a chicken. Yeah, I am. Because I would rather, as I said, I would rather do, again, sort of contrary to intuition, contrary to what most people would think, because I think most people think that when you do pen and ink and watercolor, you do all the lines first, and then you do the painting, right? Do you agree? Is that what most people would think you do? In other words, you follow the coloring book pattern, that is, outlines first, color second. But as is the case, at least for me, with many aspects of art practice, it's counterintuitive. I would rather do, now understand I'm not, I'm chicken today. But normally I would rather do at least a much of the watercolor first and then come back and do pen and ink, because, well, one way to put it is because once the lines are on the page, there's sort of a temptation to try to color in the lines, so to speak. And that is a temptation that I do not want to yield to. So anyway, be that as it may, this is the way I'm doing this one because I'm chicken. Squeezing some ink down into the nib. Well, I thought it was. Hang on just a second. There's a plunger. You squeeze it counterclockwise. Oh, okay. That pen's just out of ink, so I had more ink here, but I also have another pen here that I think's all ready to go. Yeah, so I'll take the quick way out here. You recognize that spot?
Yeah.
You guys like bandsaws.
We do.
I see 4 of them down there. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Yeah, fun. What a beautiful scene. All that wood, just
so
beautiful.
You're filming it too, huh?
Yeah, I'm broadcasting.
Oh, okay.
On YouTube.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for not freaking out and running away like most people
problem.
do.
There's camera crews and stuff in here all the time.
Yeah, I bet there are. Very, very picturesque. Really beautiful.
Cool, man.
Thanks. I'll show it to you when I'm all done.
All right.
This is the distant trees. If I were a little bit cute, which I might be, I would put, well, what the heck? There's a horse. There's a Shackleford pony right there. Hopefully abstract enough that nobody will really notice. It'll just be our little secret, yours and mine. There's lots of interesting stuff in this building, to say the least. This thing I'm drawing right now is actually like a cradle made to hold together the remains of an old boat. To call it a boat is here. Let me show you and take you off their stand and see if I can take you off your stand. There we go. All right. Sorry for the jerky, but there it is. You see that up there? Like the skeleton of an old rotten boat. I'm sure a plaque around here somewhere tells us how old it is or where it came from or why it's significant. I imagine it's not just an old, there's millions of those rotting away in the marshes of North Carolina. I doubt that's why there must be something about that one that's particular. Maybe it's the oldest one they ever found, or maybe it was Blackbeard's, they think it was Blackbeard's boat. This is Blackbeard country, by the way, Blackbeard the pirate. That is certainly one of the claims to fame of the North Carolina coastlands is indeed. This was, without doubt, probably the most, other than maybe the Caribbean, or Caribbean, if you will. This is the most pirate-ish part of the world. Not counting. Sorry, my mind's going to really dark places like Somali pirates with machine guns trying to hijack oil tankers and getting shot to hail. I'm assuming some of you have seen some of those tragic videos. They really are tragic, by the way. For people to be in such a desperate station of life that they would actually try to hijack. Of course, there have been several successful hijackings. That's why they still do it. Somebody told me, I heard some while ago, that the average IQ in Somalia is like, I forget what the number is, but it's a horrible and just, sad state of affairs. So I always think when anytime I happen to see one of those videos of Somali pirates being literally blown up on the sea or machine gunned to death. I mean, that's poor some mother's little boy. Anyway, there's a lot of bad things in this world. Let's talk about Syria and Turkey now, shall we? Oh, Lord help us. So many bad things in the world. Aren't you glad you tuned in? Let's talk about really sad stuff. Whew. All I'm reading a really interesting book these days. I've been reading it for several months. That's because I'm reading, I think, 8 books at the same time here. And I'm the kind of person that when I read in the middle of the day, I don't read in the middle of the day, because if I do, I feel like I'm wasting time. And it's not my job these days to read books. So I feel guilty reading books. But anyway, I've got about 8 on my bed table. And one of them is by Rollo May. And some of you would remember that name. He was a famous psychologist or psychiatrist, I think psychologist, like from the 1950s and 60s. Very famous psychologist, author, scholar. And he wrote, and now I'm forgetting the name of the book, but it's a book about beauty, like my quest for beauty or something like that, he calls it. And it is really fascinating. I got it, used on Amazon or something really cheap. And because I'm so interested in anything related to the 20th century modern art movements, I got this book, and it's very deep, very serious, very thoughtful, thought-provoking. And why am I telling you about that? There was some good reason for me to mention that. Oh yeah, that's right. I was talking about the horrors of life that go on around us every day. I mentioned Somali, half-witted Somali pirates. I'm not saying they're all half-witted, you understand. But they can't be too genius to think that they're going to, especially these, that they're going to successfully hijack an American ship that is outfitted with Navy SEALs and all their toys. Men trained to kill people fast and enjoy doing it. Sorry for being crude, rude, and blunt, but you know what I mean? So anyway, that's sad. Anyway, I don't have to start talking about sad things again. I was going to talk about why I'm talking about Rollo May. He talks a lot about beauty. And he's trying not to be overly spiritual. He's a secular, scientific, I don't know if he's a hard-going naturalist. I don't think so. But he keeps bumping into metaphysical realities, and it's quite fascinating, quite rich. So if you want a good book, and the point I was making was that art, the pursuit of beauty, and that's almost like a subset of art. 150 years ago, all art was about pursuing beauty. In our day, the distinct minority, I and others who are trying to create beauty, we're in the minority. We're the outsiders. The art establishment is in fact at war against beauty. There can hardly be any other way to say it. The academy, the elite art, they are not for beauty, they are for preaching and propaganda. That's why you feel like you're being preached at when you go to the typical modern art museum, because you are being preached at. Anyway, that's a big subject. And Rollo May has some, my point being, in a world of existential horror, art, the pursuit of beauty, has a particular role. And I'm not going to even say role to play. No, it just has a very particular function in our culture. I'm sorry, we've mostly lost it in the last 120, 50 years. Not completely, but to a large extent. And obviously, being who I am, I'm hoping that that function will in fact return to the world of art. It's never left completely, and it will never leave completely. But all right, let's get back to talking about my drawing here. Oh, and let me think. I might, because I can't really watercolor very well on my sitting on that chair. So forgive me for a minute. I'm thinking for some watercolor, I might do something like this. Want to see where I am again? Isn't that fun? This is not a wooden chair. It's made out of, PVC probably. Polyvinyl chloride, if you want to know the... Pardon?
How you making out
I'm doing great. Let me show you what I've got so far.
Oh, cool. Got enough angles and curves. And
This whole place is a feast for the eyes.
Good.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
fun, yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Where's your buddy, the other guy?
Yeah, they were sitting up there. I think they've gone to lunch finally. We're enjoying you guys this week. Thank you.
So everything's going to get moved out of here. They have an event on Thursday.
Okay, that's good to know. It'll be cleared out, eh?
Well, it'll be a lot cleared out, yeah. But we move all this stuff, so.
Yeah, if we want a good picture, get it now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Thank you. Is this your full-time job?
No, I'm a volunteer.
You're a volunteer?
Volunteer.
Yeah.
There are only two guys who actually work here. One is the guy in the dark blue shirt who's just
Yeah.
walking around. The other guy is the boat builder who will be here starting tomorrow morning, overseeing a big tall guy.
Yeah,
And those are the two employees. Everybody else that you'll see tomorrow is a
volunteers. But you're a carpenter? What?
I'm a biochemist. I was a professor at a medical school for 25 years. And I was running biotech.
This is your therapy.
This is I always wanted to get finished.
That is it. Okay, to run a biochemist?
Biochemist, right?
That's great.
PhD.
That's great. Thank you. That's a good story. I appreciate it. That's good. The man, he looks like because he's here, he looks like a carpenter. He's got a PhD in biochemistry. He taught university for 45 years. I love it. I love it.
So the guy, there are guys with all kinds of things. One of the guys is normally here. The two guys here, frequently here. One guy was not here today. Is a doctorate in pharmacy. Has a farm degree. There's another guy who's normally here on Wednesdays who has a PhD in microbiology and a doctorate of veterinary medicine as well.
Yeah, that is great. What fun. That is such a great story. That's great. Uh-oh, I think I just realized I pulled my spray bottle out of my watercolor kit a couple days ago. Let's see if I've got another one. Got a small one. So all the guys, not all, most of the guys that work here, you're saying have heart doctors and lawyers, Indian chiefs have PhDs and all kinds of stuff. That's great fun, isn't it? Life is fun, just when you think you've got stuff figured out. That guy in coveralls is a university professor. That's hilarious. I like it when people surprise us. Break our categories, you know. All right, I'm going to spray a little bit of water on that. Just go ahead and get it going a little bit. All right, let's take a nice little brush. We zoomed in almost. Let's fix that a little bit. Let's take a nice little brush. Get 2-inch brush. Yes, a little bit of outdoor color. Okay, once again, some of you guys, some of you water guys and gals, some of you people who say you want to get loose or you want to be loose. Okay, I know I'm getting a little bit more ornery in my old age. I say stop talking and just do. Stop saying you want to get loose. Whoa, so, oh, wait a minute, something bad is happening here. That ink is supposed to be waterproof. Well, doggone it. That was a bad thing, wasn't it? That is not part of the deal here. That's very strange. Wow, that is very troubling. It's going to make this job more interesting than I wanted. Wow. I wonder if it's just not dry enough yet. As you can see, I'm painting away anyway. I'm never going to let a little running ink ruin my day. I'll just be doing more blotting than I had expected. All right, so back to my smart aleck words about being loose. So as I get some of you guys that need to be loose. Well then, pick up a 2-inch brush. Stop painting with those little dinky things. Just stop. Don't stop talking about it. Just do it. I wish I could get looser. And believe me, I am no great watercolor painter. I mean, I don't even claim. I mean, I can do it if I, really hunker down, but I don't really want to, because I like my watercolor sketch technique enough. I like it better actually than my legitimate watercolor. I like my watercolor sketch approach better than my real traditional watercolor technique. Am I making sense? I do. In fact, if you go to my dannelsonart.com and click on paintings, then there's an album there of my watercolor paintings, and you can see several of my, what I call, again, legitimate or sorry, sometimes I can't talk and paint at the same time. There's times for talking, and sometimes there's just time for painting. That was one of those. I was a watercolor major in college. I've told you that story before. It's because I started out as a acrylic painting focus, but I was so poor in college, I couldn't really afford to buy paints, or enough paints. So I developed a habit of watering down my acrylic paints more and more and more and more and more, till finally I just admitted, okay, I'm not an acrylic painter, I'm a watercolor painter, because I watered down my, and you can do that, by the way, but for what it's worth, in case you wondered. what happened, and very sorry about no sound. That's because my battery in my microphone died. Do I have sound now? I think I do. So sorry about that. That's pretty. So y'all enjoyed that silence, didn't you? Sorry, gang. Woo. I guess I'll keep the. Yep, sound is working now. I am so sorry. That is, I was completely distracted, as you can see, by cute little girls, and the battery died in my phone. So, excuse me. I'm going to sit down here in a minute. All right. Sorry about that. I know it's probably no sound for who knows how long, hey? You didn't miss much. I wasn't saying anything intelligent, and I was talking to people much of that time. You did miss cute little Sarah Dell from somewhere in North Carolina and her family. Okay, I'm just about finished here actually. I'm going to let this dry for a minute or 5, and let me read your chats while I wait for that to dry. And then I'm going to do some whiteout. Sorry about that. Whew, was that lovely? I hope you didn't hear that, but I'm afraid you did. All right. Let me see. A few chats here. Michael says hi to everyone. An old Dory boat. Dory, that's a good name for that boat. Thank you, David. David saying start a Facebook group, bad artist group. Yes, Muskie. I don't know if you guys are still with me. That was 45 minutes ago. Yeah, the guy that taught biochemistry is now building boats. Isn't that fun? David says, keep it. I usually keep it. I play the cards close to my chest that I'm a preacher, David. 250, you lost sound. Okay, sorry. Half an hour, no sound. Sorry about that. Everybody says no sound. Let's imagine. There you go. Ray, let's imagine what he is saying. Sketch in with colored pencils in 4 layers, light to dark, yellow first layer. That's exactly right. Good job, Ray. You got it. And David says, Ray, you need to rant more. I saw this earlier, Ray. Number 1 rule of painting is make interesting marks. How colors look better if they're transparent. 4 more. Ray, you have been taking notes, my friend. You have been taking good notes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Whew. All right. Tell you what. um, I'm very sorry about my non-sound. My batteries died, and I didn't even bring spare batteries with me. They're back at the house, so sorry about that. I'm going to take this little watercolor painting over here. I'm trying to get it dry. I know you can't hear me very well when I'm over there. That's what happens when my battery is dead. Lots of interesting stuff over here. Hang on, let me mess around with things here a minute. All right, let me test this sound and see. Make sure that. Can you hear me well? Okay, there we go. So while I'm waiting for my paint to dry, there's some historic early outboard motors. That's kind of fun. And this boat was built in 1915 and caught fire and sank in 1915. I'm sorry, that's kind of hilarious. But it's called a shad boat, the official boat of North Carolina. So as you can see, I won't bother reading all that to you. See they down here. Lap strake. That's the name of that kind of boat making right there is called lap strake, which makes sense. The word lap, you know, like that word is kind of universal. That's interesting. It was the first boat built at this museum, 1977. Anyway, okay, maybe my painting's dry. Let's get back to business, eh? Right, I think I can sit down now and just focus on work. One more modification of the sound here. Test 1, 2. All right. Now here's the This is the most shocking aspect of my cheating approach to watercolor. That is, I actually use whiteout. It is a nice place, isn't it? Thanks for noticing. Well, this will be a, there we go. As you can say, this will be a very short broadcast. Well, no, it's already, it's already been long. I mean, it's going to be, it won't go much longer if this pen doesn't work. But it's working now. So this is the part that would make any real watercolorist blanch, as the saying goes. To blanch is to turn white. So this would make most watercolorists turn white with horror. The nerve of this man. The nerve to use whiteout in a watercolor painting. That's why I don't call it a watercolor painting. I call it, I'm very careful to call it a watercolor sketch, because then I can get away with moida. I can get away with a lot if I just call it a sketch instead of a watercolor painting. David, I like your idea of starting a Facebook group for bad artists. Are you going to invite me to be a part of it? That's the only thing I'm worried about. Whoops. Whoa. Okay, I'll just have to talk louder. David, here's a Facebook group that really ought to be started. Oh, hang on, gang. I'm about to lose you, or you're about to lose me, one or the other. My battery packs are dying. All right, can you hear me? Let me tell you a story. This is a Facebook group that really ought to be started. It was about 8 years ago now. My wife and I have a dear friend from Russia. She and her husband, well, Lithuania, I mean, and she spoke Russian. That's the point. And her husband died, and so she was a single woman, and we befriended her, and because she spoke Russian, she wanted me to meet a friend of hers whose husband had been an artist. He had passed away, but he had been a hobby artist much of his life back in Russia. And the Russian widow was wondering what she could do with her husband's beautiful paintings. And indeed, they were beautiful. They were very beautiful. The only downside was they were pretty much copies of other people's paintings. So, you know, a difficult marketing challenge. Nevertheless, they were, in fact, beautiful paintings. The part of this story that broke my heart was that this man who had done all these beautiful paintings in Russia didn't have quality art supplies. So many of his paintings, can you guys hear me? Many of his paintings that were beautiful were painted on cardboard, like the back of a cereal box. I mean, like if you cut apart a cereal box and open it up and then turn it over, the gray side, that's what this man did many of his paintings on. And of course, it's not archival, so his paintings were literally decaying. And that was sad. It's sad most of all that he had to paint on such horrible. It made me realize again, again, how blessed we are in America, in much of the West, how blessed we are. First of all, how wealthy, how affluent we are. Even those of us who are quote unquote broke. I mean, I've never been that broke that I couldn't afford canvas to paint on, you know. And then, of course, besides that, then the fact that his works were decaying because they were on such poor materials. Well, here's the, and at the same time, okay, so here's the rest of the story. At the same time, a dear friend of mine, his mother had become, had dementia. And she was moving into an assisted care facility. And she also was a very gifted artist. She made a living as a graphic designer, I think. But she graduated from the Art Institute of Chicago or something like that. She worked in a wide range of mediums. And so at the time I thought there ought to be a museum somewhere. A museum dedicated to very gifted artists. I mean really gifted ones that nobody knew when they were alive. Like my dad would go in that category. Really gifted artist. I almost said musician because he was that too. Really gifted artists. So there ought to be a Facebook for that. Especially, I'm thinking artists who have passed away. Isn't that a great idea, David? You want to take that one? Take that project on? Museum for dead artists who were really good but not famous. All right. If I decide to do more of this later, I will do so. But essentially, I think I could call this finished. That was fun. Thanks for watching in spite of my bad sound. It's available, by the way. It's $75. Anybody wants it, just say, I want it. Either in the chat or the comments, okay? Thanks, y'all. I will sign it. I'll stop now. Bye-bye.